But here was James Golden, Bo Snerdley talking about Rush.
Have we got fun in store for you today?
One of those personalities may not have gotten his start technically on WABC because when he started, he was on 56 stations or 53 radio stations, including WABC. WABC was the flagship station. But it was here at WABC that Rush Limbaugh rose from a literal nobody in terms of being a household name to the biggest name in the talk radio business and eventually transcended talk radio.
Well, he left a little bit out there. A lot of it that you need to know. I mean, these kind of documentaries should be really exciting to teach you things you didn't know about these shows. James sort of set the place at the table, but didn't give you the 10-course meal like I'm going to. In fact, he talked about Rush in this capacity.
And one of the amazing things about Rush Limbaugh, during those years when it was growing exponentially, he still every day loved being at WABC, still loved calling WABC Radio his flagship station.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He hated WABC. He was a recluse. He would do his show with the golden microphone, and then he would go back into his office, smoke his cigars, which broke every rule on the floor. He did not want to be here. In fact, the real story, because I don't know if James Golden, a.k.a. Bo Snerdley, knows this part of it. So Rush Limbaugh came here from Sacramento. He was the #1 afternoon talk show host in Sacramento. In fact, I had been on the show that was the prior show to the show he took on in Sacramento with a female. I forget her name. When I was organizing the Guardian Angels in Sacramento and Fresno. So it's before Rush had his show there. But he was big in Sacramento. But let's face it, you think Sacramento compared to New York, you're a hayseed. So he comes to New York, and they put him on from 10 to 12, mid-morning. And people were calling up saying, oh, you just don't want to be Bob Grant. Oh, you just don't want to. Bob Grant does it better. I mean, that's all he heard on the radio. And he was a recluse. He'd stay in his apartment. He'd stay in the office, smoke his cigars. And then one day he tells management, he tells the program director at that time, John Minnelli, I'm going back to Sacramento. You better get another guy. I'm going back to Sacramento. I can't deal with this. Every time I get on the radio, somebody, you want to be Bob Grant, King of Talk Radio. Go back to Sacramento. Do you want me to go back to Sacramento? I'll go back to Sacramento. So this vice president of programming calls him and says, no, Rush, don't go back. We're going to roll out the national program. We want you to still do the 2-hour local program from 10 to 12, but then we're going to open it up, a national program for an hour. Then it became 2 hours. Then it became 3 hours. And then he just exploded right across the nation. But when he was just doing a local show here at WABC, the guy was ready to pack his bags and leave. I mean, everybody was getting on his case because they would actually call up and say, you're no king of talk radio. That's Bob Grant. And Bob would fuel the fire. He said, hey, I understand there's a guy 10 to 12 trying to sound like me. That just made it worse for Rush. But he was convinced to stay here, and you know the rest of that history. And then, of course, the king of talk radio, Bob Grant. Nobody, I'm telling you, nobody could shift gears in more different ways than Bob Grant. I don't care. You talk about Rush, you talk about Sean, you talk about Mark Levin, you talk about Gene Shepard. We could go right on down the line. Nobody could touch Bob Grant. How many people ended up listening to Bob Grant that were introduced to talk radio? Sean Hannity says that from Franklin Square, Long Island. Our own Bill O'Reilly says that, who grew up in Levittown. Howard Stern says that, who grew up in Roosevelt. I did. Mark Levin, who lived outside of Philadelphia, says he listened to Bob Grant also when Bob Grant was on the Philadelphia station when he was exiled there from New York, WMCA, the first time at WWDB. Yeah, we all learned from Bob Grant. And thank God, each and every one of those people that I mentioned have paid tribute to him. So here was, out of all the promos that Chris Libertini could find about the King of Talk Radio, listen to this lame one.
Bob Grant.
In spite of all the vituperation that takes place during the Bob Grant program, I'm very gratified, quite seriously, very appreciative of the fact that this is, without doubt, the best radio audience in the world.
Bob Grant, weekdays at 3 on WABC.
Did he slow down Bob Grant there? Did he give him Quaaludes? My God, he picked maybe the worst promo ever done about Bob Grant, the King of Talk Radio. Now, the guy I would have had doing episode 7, especially those parts about the King of Talk Radio, Bob Grant, it's Rich Rodabali, who was here at that time. What was Chris Libertini playing with his G.I. Joe doll at that time? I don't even think he was birthed. He's probably an FM guy, you know, freaking moron, feeble-minded, fornicating madly, free marijuana, and listening to Frank Morano, right? Doesn't strike me as an AM guy. Listen to Rich Rodabali talk about the King of Talk Radio.
This is Rich Rodabali, executive producer here at WABC Radio, and here's a quick story about Bob Grant. Back in the day when I was call screening for him, his producer had booked a dominatrix to come on the show. She comes up to the studio, live in the studio. She's coming up. She's got black leather pants on, a black stud collar around her neck. She's got high heel shoes on, and she's a little petite little girl. And she's doing the interview, and Bob's asking her all questions about the industry and all sorts of stuff. And then all of a sudden he becomes a little skeptic. He says, "You don't really look like a dominatrix. How can you be a dominatrix? You're rather petite," and so forth. And she goes crazy. She says, "What, are you crazy? Of course I'm a dominatrix. I'm just talking about how the business was going and everything and what I'm doing." And then she gets up and she proceeds to go over to Bob Grant. She turns around. She shakes her booty in Bob's face. She turns around. She drops her top and flashes Bob 2 inches from his face. And then she turns around into the studio and flashes us in the studio. It's the greatest thrill ever I got on the radio. And that's the story of the dominatrix came to visit Bob Grant.
All of that true. And he did that a few times. He did that at WMCA when he was there, and he did that at WABC. By the way, wasn't that a much more exciting profile of Bob Grant than that lame promo that Chris Libertini chose, which probably was the worst promo I ever heard about the King of Talk Radio? I want you to listen to Bob Grant just reading a hate letter from Evelyn.
Dear Mr. Grant, I listen to your program just to hear you explode and be nasty to callers. You are too high-strung and insulting, and I don't know why you are kept on the radio. You were fired before, and they must need talk show hosts badly to put up with your rotten disposition. Are you ever in a good mood? I dare you to read this, you creep. Signed, Evelyn. Ah, dear Evelyn's probably not listening. Probably on her way to the psychiatrist right now and missed the program. If you know Evelyn, tell her I read her letter on the radio, will you please? All right.
Vintage Bob Grant. By the way, booby prize to anybody who knows what position Bob Grant had when he broke into talk radio. What was his job description? And who did he work for out in Burbank, California? His original name coming out of Chicago, he went to the University of Illinois, Springfield, learned journalism, Bob Giganti. And they told him, no, you can't have that Italian name. It's got to be Grant. That's the way things were back then. They made it rough on you, especially Italians, Jews, others. They make you change your name. Our number is 1-800-848-9222. What was his role? What was his job function? And which great talk show host did he work for who not only had a nationally syndicated radio show, but had a nationally syndicated television show and smoked 4 packs of Chesterfield no-filtered cigarettes each and every day? 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-WABC. And then he could give a bris to a caller like Karen, who was calling.
Karen, you're on WABC. Hello.
Hey, Bob, take it easy.
Okay, goodbye.
Okay. somebody says take it easy, that means they don't want to talk to me.
You say that? Now, could you imagine anybody doing that now? Of course not. Frank Morano, desperate for calls the other day. The whole the week, national syndicated show for Frank. He was desperate for calls. You imagine if Karen called up, he would have kept her on for a half hour. Lack of self-esteem. Bob knew, where there's one, there are many. Our number is 1-800-848-9222. This is all part of episode 7, the way I would have done it. Here's Tom calling up to King of Talk Radio, Bob Grant, about the 900 numbers.
Tom, you're on WABC. Hello.
Good afternoon. You know what to complain about? What I see every day on television, those 900 numbers, with those chicky poos, all the 900.
By the way, why are you using the name John? Oh, no, this is Tom.
This is Tom.
Okay, Tom. All right.
First time I called this week.
Okay.
That's the rule, right? Okay.
Your voice is so, shall we say, distinguishable,
right,
with the prominent nasality, that I can pick you up quite easily.
Right.
By the way, what do you do besides call the Bob Grant Show? Do you do anything else with your life?
Well, I'd like to just talk about the 900 numbers on the television screen you see every night.
Yeah, okay. I'll bet you're on welfare. I have a hunch you're on welfare.
Love line, talk, gals, fun line, true confessions, and all that nonsense.
In addition to...
Do you watch that stuff?
Speaking of nonsense, Tom, why do you watch that junk?
I have no choice. The television says that. What am I going to do? Turn the thing off every time?
Yeah, why don't you read a good book for a change?
I watch good television, the news,
Yeah, that's why you're so well informed. All right. He'll try to slip through later in the week. But, of course, tomorrow he can call because there'll be a dumb ball game on.
That's right. Yankee baseball would preempt Bob Grant, and the ratings would, fall. I mean, imagine Yankees, right? The marquee baseball team didn't matter. Could not match the King of Talk Radio. And the fans, they were like going cold turkey. They have to listen to the Yankees and not Bob Grant. It's not like you could listen to a podcast. It was appointment radio back then. He was on at 3. He would write up his introductory remarks. You missed it, boy. You missed the best. I'm telling you, I've listened to a lot of talk radio. Nobody could change up like an 18-wheel tractor trailer. 18-wheel, what are we talking about? Yeah, 18-wheel. 18-wheel? Yeah, 18-wheel tractor trailer. Like Bob Grant, the King of Talk Radio. Our number is 1-800-848-9222. Listen to him talking to a caller who's screaming about the fact that Bob Grant is advertising Japanese cars.
Hello, Fred. This is Bob Grant with you on WABC.
How are you, Bob? First-time caller. I've never really been motivated enough to call, but this time I am. I've heard you talk about the Japanese in the past and how you feel about the economics of the Japanese towards Americans, and just wondering why you're not more discriminatory in your commercials. And every commercial seems to be a Hyundai or a Toyota or a Subaru commercial.
What's wrong with
about that, Bob?
What's wrong with that?
Well, it seems that it's taking more life out of the American every time they sell another Japanese car in this country.
Well, then they better stop making such good automobiles, and Americans maybe won't buy so many of them.
Well, I feel we're making quality automobiles at the time.
Well, that's fine. Then fine. Then maybe somebody will buy one.
Well, advocates like yourself.
Hey, look, pal, I got. Hey, look, I got news for you. First of all, I don't believe you're a sincere caller. I don't believe you're just somebody that reacted to something he heard and felt he wanted to talk about.
I heard your Subaru commercial of them singing, we're in the money, we're in the money. This sounds like it's a subliminal Japanese message trying to sell Japanese cars.
Subaru, wow.
Yeah, we're in the money, we're in the money. What kind of song is that for a Japanese?
I slipped that in there, see? FCC ain't going to catch you now when you use Italian. I know. I learned from the King of Talk Radio. That was good. Chris Libertini, that was good. Hey, look, it's not difficult to mine great stuff from the annals of Bob Grant. It was always good. And, for instance, Frank Morano, desperate for phone callers, his first week in national syndication. I love you. Oh, Frank, you're so wonderful. And Frank would keep him on for like 20 minutes. The King of Talk Radio, Bob Grant, is your life so meaningless that you wait every day at 3 o'clock to listen to me? Get off my phone, you jerk. No, Bob, you're wonderful. I got to get out of here. I got to get... Oh, such good talk radio. We really don't have that kind of talk radio any longer. When the king died, king of talk radio, he took it with him. By the way, he was a kleptomaniac. He took everything with him. Sandwiches, yogurt, out of the refrigerator. I'll never forget, brand new to the job, in the mailroom. Vinny, Panamanian guy, right? He worked mailrooms all throughout corporate America, down on Wall Street. Gets hired by John Manelli, the program director. And he sees Bob Grant walking with his bag of lunch. It's got his name on it and eating his yogurt. You know, he had the Dannon strawberry yogurt. So he's going to go grab Bob Grant, who was a very short guy. You would have thought he was a big guy. Punch your nose right down your throat. So all of a sudden, John Manelli sees this. He runs interference. He goes, "What's wrong, Vinny? He stole my lunch." "Shh, come here. Yeah, I'll give you $20. Go get whatever you want. Don't say anything." Guy was a kleptomaniac. They used to let you actually use a car. If you were promoting a car from a car dealership, they would let you drive it around for about a month. You can't do that any longer. That's like a quid pro quo. That's like you scratch my belly, I scratch yours. So John Manelli did not want to go into the office of the King of Talk Radio on Bob Grant and tell him to give over the keys of the Cadillac Eldorado that he was driving around back and forth to Manalapan on the Jersey Shore where he lived. He said, "Curtis, you got to get the keys. You got to get the car. We're going to get in trouble. It's a federal law now. It's payola." So I go in there. I said, "Bob, you got to give me the keys." "What do you mean?" "Hey, this is what you do, kid. You snore. You snore." You see, that's Frank Morano. He snores everything. You know, free comps at Atlantic City, the au pair to take care of Carmine while he's losing all of his money at the crap table. We'll talk about that in the next hour. But yeah, the King of Talk Radio, you got to snore. Hey, you know how many Cadillacs I've sold for them? And he's right. Probably sold like 20 Cadillacs for him. Just the fact that Bob Grant, the King of Talk Radio, was driving an Eldorado. The Cadillac dealership was in Teaneck. They had mad business because, I got to be like Bob Grant driving that Eldorado. They ran out of that make and model. He goes, "I sold 20 and I can't even keep one." "No, Bob, we'll all get in trouble." So begrudgingly, he gave me the keys. And then I brought it into that wuss's office, John Manelli. "Oh, thank you." You can't confront him? "No, he's the King of Talk Radio.